My name is Hazel. I'm 28, and what was meant to be a quiet holiday return turned catastrophic in mere moments. The moment I stepped into my childhood kitchen, the flickering ceiling bulb cast dim light over Grandpa Ernest, seated silently at the table, struggling to chew through a sad, half-stale sandwich. A single sheet of torn notepaper taped to the refrigerator door stopped me cold. Used your savings for Connor. Keep an eye on him this week. We're in Cancun. Mom and Dad. The $23,000 I'd meticulously put aside for student debt, erased with a single ink stroke. My grandfather's fingers, visibly trembling, reached out to clasp mine. They'll feel the weight of this, my dear, he murmured. I simply gave a small nod. 3 days later, those words echoed in full force, but before I share how it all unraveled, tell me, where are you watching from? Don't forget to subscribe if you're here for justice served cold. Responsibility clung to me like a second skin. Since I was 16. When Dad was laid off and Mom's inconsistent retail hours barely covered electricity, survival became a family project. While my peers spent afternoons trying on dresses and chatting about prom themes, I stood in the cold aisle of Morgan's grocery, restocking shelves until close. At dawn, I tossed newspapers onto porches. No one ordered me to, somehow, I just knew we were sinking and I had to help plug the leaks. Connor, only 11 then, was spared. Too young for labor, too aware not to sense the growing tension in the air. Mom always repeated her tired defense, Connor's delicate. He needs peace. So while I mastered coupon clipping, he continued his gaming subscriptions and baseball sessions. I didn't envy him then. He was a kid. I let it go. By 19, I'd accumulated enough for prerequisite courses at community college, working nights as a hospital orderly. Each month, $800 left my account and entered what Mom called my future stash, an account she insisted on overseeing personally. Financial institutions take advantage of the inexperienced, she warned. Let us protect it for you. I believed her. Over 4 years, that fund swelled to $23,000, my lifeline to erase loans after graduation. Throughout those hard years, Grandpa Ernest was my anchor. My mother's father, a retired engineer with grease-stained palms and unwavering kindness, taught me real-world lessons: how to unclog a drain, rotate tires, and demand respect. Use your backbone before begging with your wishbone, he'd joke as he helped me diagram nursing processes on scrap paper. When my parents were preoccupied, a euphemism for Dad's endless poker games and Mom's wine nights, Grandpa's weathered home became my haven. Connor's life followed a far messier path. At 14, teachers reported chronic missed homework. At 16, he was caught with weed in his locker. By 18, he'd changed schools multiple times, each exit explained away by my parents as a misunderstanding or poor teaching staff. Last Christmas, he didn't appear until dinner was served, glassy-eyed, murmuring one-word answers. Mom doted as usual, heaping his plate and brushing off concerns with, he's just discovering who he is. Not everyone needs college. Meanwhile, Grandpa's health took a downturn. The physician mentioned early-stage Parkinson's. Tremors began. Tasks like slicing vegetables or turning knobs became difficult. My parents barely made an appearance at his house, even though they lived a short drive away. When I brought up making the home more senior-friendly, Mom deflected. Connor might enroll in community college soon. We're optimistic. Despite everything, my career thrived. Pediatric care suited me, structured, nurturing, deeply fulfilling. Children responded to my calm demeanor. Parents trusted my guidance. Just last month, I was offered a leadership position at Portland Children's Hospital. I wept during the call. For once, my work was seen and valued. 2 years ago, I'd arrived on Christmas Day and found Grandpa alone, carefully layering turkey on sandwich bread. They said you were joining them, I recalled, confused after heading straight to his house from the airport. He smiled without conviction. They called earlier. Connor's not feeling great, so they rescheduled. His nonchalance couldn't hide the sting. We drove to my parents' place uninvited. Inside, they lounged in their festive pajamas, sipping cocoa and watching holiday movies. Connor, very much healthy, laughed at the screen. Mom looked annoyed. We didn't make enough food, she muttered. Dad offered a half-hearted seat. That night, wrapped in a blanket on Grandpa's porch, he squeezed my fingers. One day, you and I will find our moment to stand up for what's right, Hazelnut. I nodded, unsure what that would ever look like now, with that hideous note clenched in my hand and Grandpa's empty fridge humming behind me. I knew our moment had arrived. The paper crumpled under my grip. My entire body collapsed under the weight of disbelief. Years of endless overtime shifts, missed birthdays, and cheap instant meals, obliterated for whatever latest mess Connor had landed in. I dropped to the cold linoleum floor, shaking. They've gone too far, I whispered, my eyes clouded by tears. That was mine. I believed them. Grandpa lowered himself beside me, his joints cracking with each movement. He felt friendlier than I remembered, smaller. Still, his presence anchored me. Haven't touched the stove since Tuesday, he murmured. Can't keep my hands steady enough to hold a skillet anymore. He extended his hand, the tremor unmistakable now. Didn't want to trouble anyone. I dried my face on my sleeve and surveyed the room with fresh eyes. Overflowing dishes teetered in the sink. Final notice envelopes scattered across the countertop. The refrigerator contained mustard, synthetic cheese slices, expired condiments, and a lone crusty bread bag. No fruit. No fresh produce. Nothing remotely nourishing for a man fighting a progressive illness. Where's Connor? I asked suddenly, the detail jolting back. Grandpa's eyes darkened. Stopped by yesterday morning. Asked for $20. Took my car. Said he'd return. In a few hours. He looked pointedly at the clock on the wall. 30 hours had slipped by since Connor vanished. My efforts to reach my parents only rewarded me with Verizon's robotic optimism. Both numbers rang out. The only message offered? Creating memories. In Cancun. Leave a voicemail. There was no emergency contact. No plan. No concern. Connor's bedroom felt like stepping into a crime scene. A cutting-edge gaming console blinked from the desk, surrounded by brand-new designer outfits, tags. Untouched. On the nightstand, prescription vials with their identifying information torn off shared space with loose razor blades and a miniature weighing scale. A thick fog of marijuana clung to the air, its scent strongest at the basement door. Downstairs, crushed beer cans formed a metallic graveyard near the couch, his apparent throne. The doorbell's sharp ring cut through the heavy silence. Brenda Nelson, our neighbor, stood wrapped in her wool coat, a storm of concern etched into her lined face beneath neatly styled silver curls. Hazel, thank the heavens you're back, she sighed, pulling me into a tight hug. I've been beside myself worrying about your grandfather. Her voice dropped a notch. That brother of yours has been throwing wild gatherings. 3 nights ago, I counted at least 15 cars lining the street. Called your folks, but your mom brushed it off, said boys need release sometimes. After Brenda departed, I dialed Audrey, my closest confidant and moral compass. Between choked sobs, I told her everything. She didn't miss a beat. Check your credit report. Now. Her no-nonsense tone sharpened, legal training kicking in. If they accessed one account, others may be compromised. I did as instructed. No new cards or debts appeared. But the savings account, my future fund, was empty. 6 months' worth of discreet withdrawals culminated in one final transfer 3 days prior. Gone. Confirmed by the bank. Each withdrawal authorized by Diana Mitchell, my mother, who still held joint ownership from my teenage years. My breathing faltered. My future, siphoned away bit by bit under the guise of safekeeping. Night crept in. With cupboards bare, Grandpa and I made do with peanut butter on dry toast and warm tap water. What's the plan for your loans? He asked softly, concern deepening the creases around his kind eyes. I stared blankly at my sandwich's ragged edge. No clue. My deferment ends in February. And Connor? The name hung between us like a bad smell. My younger brother, reckless, coddled, unpredictable. Indulged endlessly by 2 adults who believed enabling counted as love. No one knew where he was. What condition he might be in. Or what further damage he could inflict. As if reading my spiraling thoughts, Grandpa reached across the table, laying his hand atop mine. His grip, though weak, carried certainty. We'll find him, he vowed. But this time, things won't go back to the way they were. I nodded slowly. Betrayal and fatigue wrapped around my ribs like weights, but tonight wasn't for battles. It was for stabilizing Grandpa's health. Medications. Had he taken them? Where were the bottles? Panic returned full force. Drawers were rifled through. Cabinets pulled open. No pill organizer. No labeled containers. Only more signs of chronic neglect. Connor promised to pick them up yesterday, Grandpa said wearily. Never came back. I checked the clock, 11:42 p.m. Too late to get prescriptions. Too late to fix anything immediately. Resigned, I helped him shuffle to the guest bedroom, supporting his faltering gait. Every step tested his pride. I'm so sorry, I murmured, adjusting his blankets. You shouldn't have to endure this. He patted my arm, expression weary but gentle. Hazelnut, this isn't yours to carry. But as I stood alone in the hallway, facing a house marinated in neglect, I understood the truth. It was mine now, entirely. And I wouldn't run from it. Sunlight filtered through the blinds at dawn, illuminating dust motes and years of avoidance. Webbing clung to ceiling corners. Water stains decorated plaster. The handrail wobbled dangerously as I descended. A home once alive now screamed. With silent decay. A metaphor in wood and drywall, long-standing problems buried until they demanded attention. In the kitchen, Grandpa sat sipping coffee that had long gone cold, an old photo album opened before him. His fingertips traced the faded surface of a snapshot. Mom as a teenager, scowling at the camera while a younger Uncle James beamed beside her. History loops back, he muttered as I sat down. Diana always hated that James got more attention. Now she's crafting the same mess with her own. The album painted a story I hadn't dared confront. My 5th birthday, Connor, still in diapers, tearing through my presents while I stood unnoticed. High school graduation, Mom and Dad flanking Connor proudly, while I stood off to the side in my honor cords. Last Christmas, Connor sprawled across the center couch, unwrapping gadgets, while my bookstore gift card sat forgotten on a side table. I ignored the signs, I admitted aloud. Thumbing through decades of reframed memories. Kept telling myself they babied him because he was struggling. Grandpa shut the album gently. Protection becomes a prison when it replaces consequences. Your brother's never had to stand on his own. They made sure of that. A sudden ping pulled my gaze to my phone, an alert from my bank. Scheduled. Student loan payment due in 30 days. That $23,000? It should have nearly halved my debt. Instead, it funded sunlit beaches for 2 selfish adults and an enabler's endless escape from responsibility. The financial cushion I had built painstakingly for years had evaporated. I should have transferred that money the moment I graduated. I murmured, guilt creeping up like a tide. That old, suffocating voice inside whispered self-blame, as if the betrayal were my fault. Hindsight only helps if it drives action, Grandpa countered gently. What matters now is how you respond. Determined to get a full picture of the chaos, I combed through the house from attic to crawlspace. Each room painted a clearer picture of decades of mismanagement and indulgence. Connor's closet resembled a luxury boutique, pristine sneakers, high-end jackets, and shirts from exclusive designers, some still in their shopping bags. His setup rivaled a tech showroom, next-gen consoles, studio-grade headphones, and a sleek laptop that screamed excess. And yet, Grandpa's life-saving prescriptions remained unclaimed at the pharmacy. Overdue notices warned of impending power. And water cutoffs. A shrill ring sliced through the silence, startling both of us. I answered. This is Mrs. Patel, came the firm yet weary voice of Connor's former guidance counselor. He's missed another mandatory check-in. That makes 3 this month. It's required for his GED program. Her concern bled through. Professional detachment, I'll take care of it, I assured her before ending the call. When I turned back around, Grandpa was staring at a document with trembling hands. They took from me too, he whispered, sliding the page across the table. The paper detailed a $30,000 withdrawal from his retirement account, taken the year my parents renovated their kitchen. They called it a loan, he explained. Said it was temporary. He'd asked about repayment, but excuses piled up, Connor's emergencies, tuition, counseling, car trouble. Eventually, he gave up asking. The realization hit me like a slap. This wasn't isolated theft. It was a legacy of manipulation. My mother and father had bled dry their own savings, siphoned my sacrifices, and now had consumed what little Grandpa had left, all to prop up a version of reality where Connor never had to suffer consequences. Remember when Connor totaled Dad's car? I asked, my mind flipping through buried memories like old files. They took my college fund to replace it. Grandpa exhaled slowly. And your senior year, the graduation cash? They used it to send Connor to that wilderness rehab. The one he quit after 2 days because Diana couldn't bear him being mad at her. His jaw tightened. She was like that with James too. Couldn't handle disapproval. Gave him everything he asked for, no matter the cost. The sentence dangled unfinished, but the meaning was clear. Uncle James had died of a heroin overdose at 23. The cautionary chapter in our family story that was quietly mourned but never learned from. Afternoon shadows grew longer as we continued our grim assessment. The damage was staggering. Beyond my wiped-out savings and Grandpa's drained account, my parents had remortgaged the house, twice. They maxed out several credit cards and secured payday loans with punishing interest rates. All of it funneled into Connor's spiraling habits and their own denial. We can't keep rescuing them, I realized aloud, bitterness mixing with resolve. They'll just keep sinking, and drag us down with them. Grandpa reached over and squeezed my hand. Some lessons only stick when consequences hurt. A knock broke our dark accounting. Through the peephole stood Nathan West, Connor's childhood buddy turned notorious neighborhood parasite, shuffling on the porch. Nervously fidgeting, I'm here to feed the fish, he said, avoiding eye contact. Mrs. Mitchell asked me. We don't have fish, I almost replied, but then I understood. Nathan wasn't here for aquarium maintenance. He was Connor's supplier. Always had been. Connor's not around, I said, voice ice cold. And he's done buying anything from you, ever again. The polite mask dropped. He owes me $800, Nathan snapped. Your parents said the cash would be here. So that's what part of my savings had gone toward, settling Connor's drug debts. My stomach turned. You need to leave, I said evenly. And don't come back. Next time, it's the police. He stomped off, grumbling curses, but I didn't flinch. When I returned to the kitchen, Grandpa looked decades older, the toll of generational damage slumped across his posture. I helped cause this, he admitted, voice hollow. After her mom passed, I overcompensated. Tried to make life easier for Diana. But I never taught her how to be responsible or resilient. Tears glistened in his eyes. We can still fix this, Hazel. We can break this chain before it destroys more of us. And just like that, beneath the faded wallpaper and yellowing photographs, a strange clarity emerged. This wasn't only about stolen finances. It was about disrupting a toxic pattern that had stretched through lifetimes. Connor didn't need more coddling. He needed intervention. Why parents didn't deserve more bailouts. They required hard boundaries. Grandpa didn't need to fade into a forgotten corner. He needed dignity and support, and I had to stop tolerating injustice disguised as family obligation. So where do we begin? I asked, meeting Grandpa's steady gaze. His eyes burned with determination. By finding Connor. Then we change everything. Operation Locate. My brother began with digital sleuthing. His latest Instagram post had been uploaded just 10 hours ago, tagged at a raucous gathering inside the abandoned Simmons house near Lakeview Drive. We had a starting point. And this time, I wasn't going in blind. Images on Connor's social feed painted a grim picture. His pupils glassy, arm draped around strangers equally out of control, flaunting gleaming new Jordan sneakers and a luxury wristwatch I immediately recognized. Mom had pointed it out once. On a late-night shopping segment, her voice dreamy. Those shoes cost a fortune, Grandpa muttered, squinting at the screen. And that watch? I added, jaw tight. Nearly $2,000. Straight from her wishlist catalog. My brother had paraded through town adorned in what used to be my savings. Determined, we compiled a list of his frequent hangouts: the graffiti-riddled skate park tucked behind the community rec center, the food court at Riverside Mall, and the crumbling train yard where teens gathered for booze and joints. After making sure Grandpa had a warm breakfast and stopping by the pharmacy to finally pick up his overdue prescriptions, we launched the manhunt. The skate park was empty, except for scattered energy drink cans and the echo of wheels from a distant alley. The mall's security officer remembered Connor but hadn't seen him in several days. 3 coffeehouses and a pair of vinyl shops later, we crossed paths with Kyle Fraser, one of Connor's few childhood companions who had actually turned out alright. Kyle shifted awkwardly when we asked. He's crashing at Max Thompson's. He finally admitted, eyes darting around. Parents are in Europe for a few weeks. That place has been a zoo lately. The Thompson estate sat nestled within Oak Ridge Estates, a polished enclave known for its iron gates, magazine-worthy landscaping, and residents who rarely locked their doors. At first glance, the colonial-style house looked like a postcard: sparkling windows, vibrant rose bushes, imported SUVs parked like ornaments along the circular drive. But the overflowing recycling bin teeming with empty liquor bottles shattered the illusion. I rang the bell. No response. Tried the door. Unlocked. Inside, the scent hit first: weed, spilled beer, sweat. Dirty dishes covered marble countertops. Takeout containers towered beside toppled furniture. Cigarette burns marred the armrests. In the sunken lounge, 3 bodies lay limp across leather seating, snoring or dead to the world. Connor wasn't among them. Upstairs, we found him curled around a toilet bowl in a guest bathroom, groaning softly. Slumped nearby on the tub's edge was Max, eyes half-lidded, looking just barely functional. Hayes? Connor squinted up at me, lips pale, forehead slick with sweat. What are you doing here? Taking you home, I said firmly, scanning the sink lined with unlabeled pill bottles. Oxycodone. Xanax. Adderall. Not a single prescription matched his name. Max stumbled upright. He's fine. Just overdid it. He's coming with us. My clinical training kicked in. Dilated eyes. Labored breathing. Slurred speech. All unmistakable. Connor whimpered something in protest as Grandpa and I lifted him to his feet, but his coordination betrayed him. The ride back was quiet, save for his groaning and occasional swears. Once home, I coaxed him into sipping water, nibbling toast, and resting under a fleece blanket while I cracked open the windows. When he emerged freshly showered, we regrouped at the kitchen table. The air was heavy with tension. My car, Grandpa said first, voice sharp despite fatigue. Where is it? Connor blinked. I think maybe at the park near Riverfront? Not totally sure. And the medications you promised to collect? A shrug slipped my mind. I slid a copy of my drained bank account across the table. Do you know what this means? He stared at it without comprehension. Mom said it was to help me. You never asked. And I never consented, I replied calmly, though my jaw ached from holding back rage. I had no choice, he snapped. Tears surfacing behind defensiveness. I owed money. People were threatening me. Because of the lifestyle you chose, I said evenly. And because Mom and Dad keep saving you from the fallout instead of helping you confront the cause. His face turned crimson. Oh, here we go. You're perfect, right? Miss Nurse of the Year. I don't want your boring life. The issue isn't your dreams, I said. It's that your current reality is dangerous. You're spiraling, and our parents finance that descent using my future. I'm not addicted, he spat. I can quit whenever I want. Grandpa, silent. Until now, leaned forward. When's the last time you went an entire day without substances, son? Connor's eyes dropped. His silence said everything. You're harming yourself, Grandpa continued softly. Just like James did. My brother jerked back as if slapped. I'm nothing like him, he muttered. I've got this under control. Is that why you're drowning in debt? I asked. Flunking out of a program designed to help you recover? Stealing from the only people who care whether you live or die? I didn't mean to, he whispered. His mask slipped for just a second, vulnerability flickering behind his usual bravado. I don't know how to stop. And just as quickly, the walls returned. Whatever. You've always looked down on me. I never have, I told him. I just want you safe, happy, stable. By your definition, he snapped. Career. Savings. Early bedtimes. You think that's life? No, I replied. Gently. But not overdosing, not owing dangerous people money, not burning every bridge you cross, that's survival. That's step one. His chair screeched against the linoleum as he bolted upright, chest heaving. I'm not doing this. Rehab talk, Connor snapped, his voice rising. You're not my mom. No, I agreed without hesitation. Because if I were, I would have gotten you proper help a long time ago, instead of feeding your spiral until you crashed. With a burst of frustration, he slammed the back door so hard the window panes rattled. I watched through the glass as he stomped around the backyard, kicking dry leaves, muttering and gesturing wildly as if locked in battle with invisible demons, or perhaps the truth I'd just laid bare for Grandpa. Let out a long breath. Diana was the same at his age, he murmured. Couldn't accept anything that challenged her view of the world. You think he'll bolt? I asked, running mental calculations. We needed to prepare if he disappeared again, he might. Try, Grandpa replied slowly. But he's cornered. No cash, no ride, and he knows Max's house won't be an option after tonight. They return tomorrow. Sure enough, after nearly half an hour of angry pacing and cooling rage, Connor re-entered the kitchen with deflated swagger. He rummaged through the fridge like a sulking teenager, then dropped into a chair with nothing but string cheese and some stale crackers. So what's the plan now? He mumbled, eyes avoiding mine. Gonna lock me in a padded room? Tell Mom and Dad I've officially ruined the family legacy? I studied him. Not just the scowling young man across the table, but the layers buried beneath. The artist who used to draw superheroes who fixed broken cities. The kid who'd cried for hours after finding a baby bird with a broken wing. Somewhere in there, that boy still existed. You're not a failure, Connor, I said gently. You're hurting. That's different. He didn't argue. Just nibbled crackers with faraway eyes, his defenses dulled by hunger and the lingering fog of chemical misuse. It wasn't supposed to be your money, he muttered eventually. Mom swore they'd repay you before you noticed anything. The same tired script. Always a short-term fix, never a long-term solution. Borrowing against a future they had no intention of honoring. And the other times? I asked, keeping my tone neutral. College savings. Graduation cash. Holiday bonuses. Were those also just temporary? His stare didn't move. They always said it was for something urgent. That once Dad's startup kicked off or Mom's raise came through, they'd make it right. His voice faltered, as if the words tasted bitter now that he was saying them aloud. Connor, Grandpa interrupted gently, do you even want to keep living this way? A long pause. Then something in his face shifted. A crack in the armor. Behind the bravado, I glimpsed unfiltered fear. I don't know any other way, he whispered. That single sentence, raw and stripped of ego, hit harder than anything else. For the first time in years, we weren't the overachieving sister and the reckless sibling. We were just two people acknowledging something broken between us, but before I could respond, his phone chimed. He checked the screen and immediately tensed. I need to head out, he said quickly, mask snapping back into place. Just for a little while. Something urgent I have to deal with. Your dealer? I asked bluntly, watching his nervous fidget. It's not what you think, he deflected, avoiding my stare. Then what is it? I challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks exactly like what I think. His jaw clenched. You don't know a damn thing about what I'm dealing with. I know it's killing you, I replied steadily. And that mom and dad are helping you self-destruct with a smile. He stood abruptly, anger flaring. I'm done with this. I'm leaving. Legally, I couldn't stop him. At 19, he was an adult. I couldn't physically detain him or have him committed unless he posed an immediate threat. He wasn't. Using in that moment. But the risk was still terrifying. You're not going anywhere until you hand over my car keys, Grandpa said suddenly, voice sharper than I'd heard in months. Connor froze. Or what? You'll call the police? Your own grandson? If I must, Grandpa said calmly. Taking what isn't yours is theft, family or not. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then, eyes downcast, Connor pulled the keys from his pocket and tossed them onto the table. There. Satisfied? I'm still walking out. On foot? With no cash? I asked. Where would you even go? He didn't answer. Just glared. Stay, I offered more softly. Have dinner. Sleep in a clean bed. We'll talk again in the morning, without shouting. He hesitated. The mention of food, or maybe the idea of peace, seemed to dull his edge. He looked thinner than ever, the hollows in his cheeks sharper than even a day ago. One night. He agreed reluctantly. But don't expect anything else. It wasn't a miracle. But it was progress. As we made basic sandwiches from the groceries I'd grabbed that morning, I watched him. This fragile window, his presence under our roof, wasn't just about keeping him safe tonight. It was about rewriting the future. We needed him here to untangle the full scale of what our parents had done, not just to him, but to all of us, later. As he drifted into a deep sleep on the couch, exhausted from emotional whiplash and physical crash, Grandpa and I sat down at the kitchen table under dim lights. We spread out bank records, statements, notes I'd scribbled hastily on the backs of receipts. Midnight ticked closer. We'll need legal guidance, I said after reviewing the transactions that gutted my savings. This crossed into financial exploitation long ago. Grandpa nodded, jaw tight. The deed's still in my name, he added quietly. I never signed it over after your grandmother passed. Even though Diana's been pressuring me for years. That single admission from Grandpa, that the house remained under his name, unlocked an entire strategy in my mind. I hesitated for a beat, then checked the time difference and dialed. Rachel Goldstein, my former roommate from college turned senior associate at a prestigious corporate firm, answered on the third ring. Despite the hour, she shifted immediately into lawyer mode. Gather every scrap of proof, she instructed, voice crisp. Screenshots. Statements. Photos. Any documentation that confirms they accessed your funds, or your grandfather's, without explicit approval. That includes joint account activity. 2. Her tone sharpened. And Hazel, secure power of attorney for your grandfather today. If your parents catch wind of resistance, they might argue diminished capacity. Preempt that. As soon as we ended the call, I sprang into action. I opened a shared cloud folder and began uploading everything. I scanned every overdraft notice, photographed the barren fridge, and added time-stamped images of prescription labels never filled. Utility disconnection warnings. Expired insurance cards. All of it, visual and financial proof of neglect and mismanagement. Grandpa skimmed through home valuation estimates. Market puts it around $350,000, he announced quietly. After clearing the mortgage and outstanding debts, there should be enough left to secure a spot somewhere structured. You're really ready to leave? I asked, aware of how much history was woven into these walls. He shuffled papers with tired fingers. This place hasn't felt like home in years. It's a hostage situation now. Diana and Thomas use it like it's theirs, leverage for schemes, a crutch for Connors. Chaos. I'm ready to be somewhere safe. I pulled up facility reviews near my Portland apartment. 3 had excellent care ratings and immediate openings. Just picturing Grandpa nearby, instead of trapped by their neglect, lifted a weight I hadn't known I was carrying. And Connor? I asked. Grandpa didn't hesitate. He needs actual rehab. Not a fresh start. Not a second chance. Real intervention. Legally, we couldn't force him into treatment, yet. At 19, he wasn't a minor. But if we had a plan, a place, and an opportunity, we could at least try. I showed Grandpa the Riverstone Recovery Center's website. Specialized care, integrated support for dual diagnoses, long-term strategy, not punishment. Actual care. They won't pay for this, Grandpa noted flatly. They won't need to, I countered. My health plan covers 60%. We could use house sale proceeds for the rest. Just after 1 a.m., I reached out to Aunt Patricia, Dad's sister. She distanced herself from the family years ago, and I suddenly understood why. Her voice was cautious until I explained everything. Then it turned fierce. They did the same thing to me, she confirmed, almost spitting the words. Convinced me to pay $122,000 for Connor's private school after expulsion number 2. They promised reimbursements. I never saw a dime. Her voice dropped. When I refused another loan, Thomas blocked me. Called me selfish. She offered to email all her documentation, bank records, messages, even notarized letters, every breadcrumb. Her story was ammunition, further proof of the long pattern we were exposing. You might want to consider a restraining order, she added before signing off. Diana can turn vindictive if cornered. Her words echoed as I pieced together. Betting for the couch. Sleep never arrived. My mind raced through possible contingencies, developing counters for every likely reaction. When the sun rose, I had the skeleton of an action plan. First, protect Grandpa's finances and health care. Access. Second, preserve every record and receipt for future litigation. Third, transition Grandpa into a better setting. Fourth, give Connor a legitimate recovery option. Fifth, draw solid lines with our parents, and make it clear that crossing them would have consequences. That morning, Rachel delivered on her promise. Legal forms arrived by email, drafts for power of attorney, health proxy designation, and asset transfer agreements. All that remained was notarization. By midday, Connor finally emerged from his room, eyes sunken but clearer than yesterday. He poked at the breakfast I left on the table, dry toast, scrambled eggs, tea, then sipped slowly until enough caffeine dulled the headache pulsing behind his temples. Were they really in Cancun? He asked eventually, suspicion creeping in. I handed him the evidence. Pictures from their Instagram feed. Spa selfies. Parasailing boomerangs. Hashtags like hashtag Deservate and hashtag Parents of Theer. His jaw tensed. Wow. Must be nice. Using your money. So they could drink cocktails while you dealt with this mess. Something behind his expression cracked. His eyes didn't hold defiance anymore. They carried doubt. Realization. It's a pattern, I said gently. They clean up your messes, sure. But when things get hard, they hand you off. He blinked. I thought they were helping. They want to feel like they're helping, Grandpa explained. But giving you money and space without structure isn't love, it's avoidance. They skip the hard work. Connor stared into his mug. So what do I do? Quit everything overnight? We want you to receive genuine support, I clarified. Voice steady. Real treatment. Not a punishment or a lecture, but recovery. Compassionate professionals. Evidence-based methods. A path to healing, not just coping. Connor leaned forward slightly, intrigued despite himself. I walked him through Riverstone's model, therapy that explored root trauma, structured routines to reset habits, medical supervision for detox, and dual diagnosis care that addressed more than just dependency. For once, he didn't interrupt, he listened. They take your phone, he muttered, brow furrowed. 2 weeks, no contact. His objection carried more weight than he likely intended. The absence of that device symbolized more than disconnection, it revealed fear. Fear of withdrawal, of silence, of being alone with thoughts long buried. I nodded gently. You'll have limited access at first. But they gradually reintroduce usage based on progress. Supervised, not erased. He fidgeted with his mug, tracing a finger along the rim. I don't have money for this. My insurance will cover the majority, I assured. And Grandpa's preparing to sell the house. His head jerked upward. What? They're going to lose it. It's in my name, Grandpa said calmly. And I'm choosing to sell. I'm finished letting them mortgage my stability for their avoidance. Connor didn't respond immediately. He stared past both of us, gears turning behind tired eyes. The weight of realization began to settle, not just about the home, but the shifting landscape of control. For the first time, he understood this wasn't bluster or threat. Action had replaced warnings. Would you really use your resources, for me? He asked, voice tentative. That single sentence carried years of poison dynamics, and upbringing. That trained us to see each other as adversaries in a game of finite affection. You're my brother, I said quietly. What I want more than anything is to see you safe. Whole. That's worth more than what you took. Something cracked. The bravado slipped. The practiced defiance softened. In that moment, I saw the child I once shared a sandbox with, the boy who wrote silly poems about superheroes with healing powers. I'm scared, he whispered. What if I can't do it? You don't have to decide right now, Grandpa said gently. Just think about where this road ends if nothing changes. His words hovered like smoke in the kitchen as we continued making arrangements. I contacted a reputable realtor who agreed to evaluate the property the following afternoon. Rachel connected us to a notary who could help finalize documents. Step by step, our framework gained definition. Connor oscillated between assisting and aimless pacing. He checked his power-down phone repeatedly, fidgeted by the door, then returned to observe in silence. The tension inside him warred with something unfamiliar. Hope.by evening, our course was clear. Grandpa would secure his independence, medically, legally, financially. The house would be sold. Connor could accept help or chart a separate path, but he would no longer be funded by denial. They're going to explode, he warned while reviewing our timeline. Especially Mom. They'll resist, Grandpa replied, his tone edged with steel. But they've already lost control. I arranged a virtual consultation with Rachel for the following morning to double-check the legal scaffolding. As we wound down for the night, the emotional climate in the house had shifted. Yesterday's fog of helplessness had cleared. For the first time in a long while, we weren't merely reacting, we were deciding, do you think this will actually succeed? Connor asked as I laid out Grandpa's prescriptions. I met his eyes. It has to. Because we can't keep surviving like this. He didn't respond right away. But after a pause, he nodded, slowly, deliberately. Maybe it was the first time in years we'd landed on common ground, however fragile. 3 generations, formerly fractured, now united not by obligation, but by necessity. Sleep found me faster than expected. The stiff couch didn't matter. Emotional fatigue finally outpaced worry. Even as I drifted off, I felt momentum, the fragile beginning of a rebuild. That illusion shattered with the sound of breaking glass. I sat up instantly, confused by the noise until memory returned. I raced upstairs, adrenaline chasing sleep from my veins. His room was empty, the window wide open. The lamp shattered beside the bed, a casualty of a rushed escape. Panic surged through me. Grandpa met me in the hallway, face drawn. He's gone. My stomach sank. A sweep of the kitchen confirmed the worst: missing car keys, the emergency cash from my bag, and the pill bottles Grandpa kept for emergencies. We need to notify the authorities, Grandpa said urgently. But I hesitated. Arresting him could destroy what little trust we'd regained. Let me try first, I said, heart pounding. I called repeatedly. Straight to voicemail. My texts remained unread. I contacted everyone I could, Kyle, Maxwell, even former classmates. Nothing. No one had seen him. By 8 a.m., my fear overrode strategy. I filed a stolen vehicle report but emphasized medical concern, not criminality. The officer took the VIN, asked clarifying questions, and assured us they'd keep watch, but her tone suggested skepticism. A family spat, not an emergency. Check emergency rooms, Grandpa urged. I swallowed the lump rising in my throat and made the calls. The 4th facility, St. Luke's Regional, confirmed it. A young man matching Connor's description had arrived just after 4 a.m. As I drove, the world blurred around me. Every second stretched into eternity. My grip on the wheel turned white-knuckled. Whatever we faced at that hospital, it would be the first reckoning, not only for Connor's choices, but for everything our family had ignored for too long. Grandpa sat beside me in the sterile waiting area, his silence weighed down by a mixture of sorrow and inevitability. His weathered features flickered between dread and weary acceptance, as if a part of him had always feared this day would come. Around us, the emergency department pulsed with urgency, monitors chimed methodically, nurses weaved between gurneys, and cries echoed behind flimsy partitions. A triage nurse directed us toward Bay 3. There lay Connor, unconscious, a breathing tube down his throat, skin washed of color. Monitors blinked overhead in quiet defiance of the chaos surrounding us. His body, so often full of restless energy, now lay still beneath hospital linens. Dr. Meta approached, her eyes kind yet unwavering. He was discovered in a public restroom at Alder Park, she began. Unresponsive. It appears he ingested a combination of opioids, benzodiazepines, and alcohol. My stomach lurched. He also ingested prescription drugs that don't belong to him. Based on our toxicology screen, heart medication, tranquilizers, and analgesics consistent with Parkinson's prescriptions. I didn't need her to explain further. Connor had raided Grandpa's pill organizer before disappearing. The Narcan administered by paramedics briefly revived his respiration, Dr. Meta continued, but he deteriorated rapidly. We had to intubate upon arrival. He's being transferred to intensive care shortly. His liver enzymes are high, very high. But he's young. There's reason for cautious optimism. My training helped me understand the terminology, but it did nothing to soften the image before me. Connor, pale and motionless, tethered to life by machines and wires. I nodded stiffly, focused on procedure. He's covered under my insurance. And I'm his legal emergency contact. Dr. Meta made note of the details and moved on, her presence leaving the air slightly colder. Turning to Grandpa, I noticed the slight tremor in his hands had worsened. His color was poor. You didn't take your morning doses, did you? He shook his head. There were none left to take. He took everything. Suppressing panic, I found the hospital pharmacy and explained the situation. The pharmacist, compassionate yet methodical, provided emergency refills. The tremors would worsen temporarily, but we'd averted a cardiac emergency. For now, with Grandpa resting in a vinyl chair under harsh fluorescent glare, I resumed my vigil beside Connor, watching each artificial breath rise and fall. Desperate for a response, I called our parents again. No answer. No acknowledgement. Voicemails full. I left one final message, voice trembling with restrained fury. Connor is in ICU at St. Luke's. Overdose. Life-threatening. Call immediately. Hours passed. Eventually, hunger gnawed through the numbness. In the cafeteria, I forced myself to purchase a dry sandwich and bitter coffee. My phone rang. Hazel, my mother slurred slightly, her voice tinged with cocktail haze. Background noise, waves, laughter, upbeat music, drifted through the speaker. I clenched my jaw. Connor overdosed. He's in critical condition. Intubated. Stolen Grandpa's medication. She hesitated. We'll catch the next flight. Tomorrow evening, she added after a pause. My grip tightened on the phone. He might not make it through tonight. And you're scheduling your return around resort availability? There weren't earlier options, she protested, suddenly defensive, like how there weren't groceries in the fridge? Like how there weren't medications in the cabinet? Like how you weren't around when Connor needed help the most? My voice rose, raw. The dam burst. All you've ever done is patch the surface, throw money at guilt, disappear when accountability was required. We'll discuss this at home, she snapped. I exhaled sharply. Sure. When you come back from playing the perfect parents on social media. She hung up. I stared at my uneaten sandwich, appetite gone, heart racing. Returning to the ICU, I was met by Melissa Jenkins, the hospital's assigned social worker. She introduced herself with calm authority. Miss Mitchell, I'd like to speak with you regarding your brother's condition. Her presence, though professional, offered something I hadn't felt in hours, stability. In her modest office tucked between clinical wings, I finally allowed myself to unravel. Surrounded by pamphlets about support services and posters quoting inspirational slogans, I wept. Not just for Connor, but for Grandpa, for myself, for the years spent maintaining illusions. They always enable him, I whispered. Cover up the fallout, blame others, and vanish when things get real. Melissa listened carefully, taking notes. No judgment, just clinical acknowledgement of a pattern that spanned decades. I've documented what you've shared, she said. Your parents' behavior toward both your brother and your grandfather fits criteria for multiple concerns: substance neglect, elder exploitation, and enabling cycles that worsen dependency. I nodded, swallowing grief. They'll insist he doesn't need rehab. That it was just one mistake. They don't make that decision anymore, she said gently. Connor's case meets requirements for involuntary treatment due to immediate medical risk. And as for your grandfather, Connecticut law mandates reporting financial abuse of elders. Relief coursed through me, not because of vengeance, but because someone outside the family was finally holding up a mirror. Perhaps systems could do what conversations hadn't: establish boundaries, enforce consequences, and introduce the concept of accountability. Later that evening, Connor's vital signs improved enough to begin weaning him off the ventilator. Machines hissed softly, guiding his body back from the edge. I sat beside him, hand resting on the sheet, not speaking, just bearing witness. We weren't out of danger, but at last, we weren't pretending either. Connor remained unconscious but no longer required mechanical ventilation, the immediate medical emergency transitioning into a delicate phase of recovery. Meanwhile, Grandpa Ernest's condition visibly declined. Multiple skipped medications, emotional strain, and inadequate sustenance combined into worsening tremors and intermittent cognitive lapses. Despite high patient volume, the hospital admitted him overnight for evaluation. His unsteady gait and erratic focus raised enough concern for monitoring. I rotated between their rooms, balancing roles: advocate, caregiver, crisis manager, fueled solely by vending machine pretzels and adrenaline. Sometime near midnight, my phone buzzed. My father's name flashed across the screen. I stepped into the hallway before answering. This is unnecessary chaos, he began, voice thick with irritation and no acknowledgement of the situation's gravity. Connor's had his issues before. He's always bounced back without all this hospital nonsense or therapy nonsense. This isn't a bad mood or a teenage tantrum, I interrupted. He overdosed on a combination of medications and street substances. He almost died. This isn't bouncing back, this is survival by inches. Unmoved, he barreled ahead. Your mother's very upset about your accusations. We did the best we could. Always. By draining my savings? By ignoring Grandpa's failing health? By throwing money at Connor instead of facing his addiction. We didn't steal anything, he shot back. We were going to return the funds after we paid off this vacation. The absurdity of it all hit me like a slap. They'd prioritized beachfront cocktails and spa indulgences over their daughter's financial stability and their own father's well-being. Dad, I said slowly, dangerously calm. Connor's lying in an ICU bed after a multi-drug overdose. Grandpa has been hospitalized due to prolonged neglect. The social worker has opened an elder abuse report. This situation is beyond you now. He sputtered, protests rising like steam. I'm not asking for permission. The decisions are already made, I continued. Connor will be moved directly from here to treatment. Grandpa is relocating to assisted care near my apartment. Your access to their finances is over. You can't dictate these choices, he snapped. I already have, I said, pressing the red button on my screen before he could escalate. Further later, Connor stirred. His eyes fluttered open, scanning the unfamiliar room, panic edging into consciousness. I approached slowly, letting him find his bearings. Where am I? He croaked, voice rough from the breathing tube. You're in St. Luke's, I replied gently. You overdosed. They intubated you. It was serious. His gaze locked onto mine, terror blooming. Am I in trouble? Not with the police, I assured. But with your body, your future, yes. You can't keep doing this. His expression crumpled. I didn't want to die. I just needed the noise to stop. I know, I said softly. But this almost killed you. For once, he didn't argue. Didn't flinch. Whatever denial he'd been clinging to dissolved under fluorescent light. What now? He whispered. Recovery, I said. Actual, long-term rehabilitation. No shortcuts. No more lies. Not another hollow promise or quick fix. They'll fight it, he mumbled, glancing toward the window. They don't control this anymore, I said, voice firm. It's your life. You decide whether it continues. His hand emerged from beneath the blanket, fingertips brushing mine with uncertainty. A silent gesture. Acceptance. Recognition. Maybe even trust. By dawn, both Connor and Grandpa stabilized, though each faced a long road ahead. I coordinated with Melissa, confirming insurance coverage and setting plans in motion. Every detail mattered: discharge timelines, treatment facility availability, housing transitions. When my phone rang again, I braced for another clash with my parents. Instead, Whitney Thompson, my supervisor at the Portland clinic, responded to the emergency leave request I'd submitted days prior. Take all the time you need, she said without hesitation. Family emergencies are covered. Your position's waiting. Gratitude welled up, sharp and overwhelming. Professional compassion from someone with no obligation felt more generous than anything my own relatives had offered in years. Thank you, I murmured. Things are complicated here. They always are, she replied knowingly. But don't forget to care for yourself. You're no good to anyone if you fall apart. Her words hit with the force of truth. For nearly 2 full days, I'd operated on sheer willpower, navigating medical disasters, absorbing emotional wreckage, fighting legal battles. My hands were steady, but my mind was fraying. I in Connor's room, I found him watching sunlight slant through the blinds. His face, though pale and gaunt, carried a new quality, focus. I remember, he said after a long silence. Taking Grandpa's meds. Driving to the park. Thinking it'd all just go away. It didn't, I said quietly. And next time, it might not be reversible. I don't want a next time, he whispered, voice shaking. I'm scared, Hayes. He hadn't used that nickname in years, not since long before the resentment, the shouting matches, the theft. Hearing it again cracked the final shell I'd built around my heart. I'm scared too, I replied, brushing hair from his forehead. But we're doing this together. No more silence. No more running. And for the first time, he didn't look away, still seated beside Connor's hospital bed, dressed in the same wrinkled clothes from the day before. I finally yielded to the fatigue clawing at every muscle and nerve. I'm scared too, I confessed quietly. But we'll figure it out, together. In that sterile room, surrounded by beeping monitors, for pumps, and uncertainty, a fragile foundation began to take shape. Not the unhealthy attachment our parents had modeled, where problems were masked by money and denial, but a tentative bond rooted in mutual accountability. 2 siblings acknowledging their fears while choosing a different path forward. Whatever awaited us next, however explosive our parents' reaction would be, this single moment of honest connection became the beginning of something redemptive. No longer rescuing or excusing, just witnessing each other's pain and standing beside it. That difference mattered. The sound of designer heels clicking across linoleum cut through the stillness like a warning bell. I didn't need to look up to identify the staccato rhythm. My mother had arrived. Diana Mitchell stormed into the waiting area like she was walking into a brunch reservation, not a crisis. Her floral sundress and oversized straw hat, tan skin glowing from days in the sun, felt grotesquely out of place in the intensive care unit. Behind her, my father trailed faithfully, khaki shorts, mirrored sunglasses hooked on his polo collar, exuding the same dissonant nonchalance. "Where is he?" she demanded, bypassing any greeting, her voice edged with accusation, as though Connor's hospitalization reflected negligence on my part. "Room 427, I answered evenly. "The attending physician is in with him now." "And you let this happen?" she snapped, flinging a hand toward the corridor. "3 days in your care and he ends up in a coma." Her words, warped with blame, burned hotter than expected. She had vanished to paradise and left me to clean up chaos, yet had the audacity to scold as if I'd orchestrated disaster. Before I could speak, the elevator doors parted again. Grandpa Ernest stepped forward with measured effort, gripping a hospital-issued walker, his discharge instructions trembling in his grasp. "Diana," he greeted with stark neutrality. "Quite the reunion." Her demeanor shifted the moment she registered his frailty. "Daddy," she gasped. "Why are you in a robe? What happened to you?" "I collapsed," he replied, voice hollow. "After going days without my prescriptions, the ones Connor swallowed before almost dying." "This is absurd," my father muttered, waving a dismissive hand. "Everyone's overreacting. He made a mistake. That's all." "A mistake that could have ended his life," I shot back. "And highlighted years of neglect. Of pretending problems didn't exist." A security guard approached discreetly, posture alert. "Is everything all right here?" My mother's posture shifted immediately. Out came the charm, false smile, soft voice. "Just a concerned mother," she purred. "Our son's being treated upstairs." "I'd recommend continuing this discussion somewhere private," the officer said, subtly directing us away from open conflict. The hospital chapel offered solitude, dim lighting filtered through stained glass. We entered in tense silence, faith symbols casting fractured reflections over our fractured family. I positioned myself protectively beside Grandpa, who eased onto a pew, his fatigue apparent. "You stole my money," I said without ceremony, locking eyes with my mother. $23,000. I'd been saving to pay off loans. "We borrowed it," she corrected automatically. "There was an emergency." A resort getaway was urgent? Color drained from her sun-kissed face. Connor had financial troubles. We needed a break. Things have been difficult. And while you were sipping cocktails, your father had no food. No medicine. I was left to manage everything while you played make-believe. "He could have called us if there was an issue," my father interjected. "I did call," Grandpa cut in, voice like gravel. 6 separate times. No answer. No response. My mother's jaw tightened. This attack is out of line. Connor needs compassion, not accusations. "He needs actual treatment," I said firmly. "Not more enabling. Not another cover-up." "He's not an addict," she insisted, tone trembling. "He's just delicate. Like James was." Invoking her brother, who died of an overdose, wasn't a plea for understanding. It was an excuse. An attempt to paint repetition as fate rather than a pattern demanding interruption. "Mrs. Mitchell?" Dr. Mehta appeared in the doorway. "Your son's asking for you." She seized the interruption as a lifeline and bolted, my father stumbling after her like a well-trained shadow. The door swung shut behind them with a thud. Grandpa lowered himself onto a wooden bench with effort. His breath came shallow, tremors more pronounced. "She'll never see it," he whispered. "Diana rewrites reality instead of facing truth." His observation, delivered through fatigue and resignation, struck with clarity. He was right. She didn't process consequences, she rearranged details until they suited her comfort. Until nobody had to be wrong. Until no pain required action. I sat beside him, silent for a long moment. "We can't wait for her to change," I said softly. "We build the life we need without her permission." He nodded once, the motion slight but resolute. Words alone would never pierce the emotional armor my parents had built over decades of denial. Only tangible consequences might eventually speak the language they refused to hear. Upstairs, Connor lay in bed, noticeably calmer, though visibly weak. The incline of the mattress elevated him slightly, while our parents hovered nearby, casting themselves once again as the saviors in a story they refused to understand. My mother ran her fingers through his hair as though comforting a toddler. Instead of a 19-year-old who had nearly died from ingesting a cocktail of substances, "The doctor says you can come home tomorrow," she declared, triumph lighting up her voice. "We'll take care of everything from here." Connor's eyes shifted to mine, something silent and significant moving between us. Then, to my complete astonishment, he slowly shook his head. "I'm not coming back," he said, voice quiet but firm. My mother froze mid-stroke. "What did you say?" "I'm going to Riverstone," he continued, slightly louder. "The program Hazel found. I've already spoken with admissions. They're expecting me." "That's not necessary," my father scoffed, tone dismissive. You made a mistake. Learned your lesson. It's time to move on. I've been addicted for years, Connor said, cutting him off. Mostly prescription pills. But whatever numbs the pain. I need help. Real help. Not more pretending. His hands gripped the blanket, twisting the fabric between his fingers, revealing nerves he fought to steady. My mother's face contorted through disbelief, then fury, then a rehearsed display of concern. If that's how you feel, we'll find an appropriate center. Something more, Riverstone has a spot open, Connor interrupted again. They take my insurance. Hazel's agreed to co-sign. We're your parents, my mother snapped, authority fracturing. These decisions are ours. I'm legally an adult, Connor countered. I choose. And I'm choosing this. For the first time in years, he didn't shrink from confrontation. He owned his voice. The assertion hit like a thunderclap, shattering assumptions long held by people who'd always treated him as helpless. Grandpa Ernest leaned forward from his chair. While we're talking about choices, he said steadily, I'm selling the house. What? My father blinked. You can't be serious. It belongs to me, Grandpa answered. And yes, I've already contacted a realtor. The listing goes live next week. But where would you live? My mother stammered, scrambling to regain footing. Parkview Assisted Living, he replied. Near Hazel. I've done a virtual tour. Sent in the paperwork. This is madness, my father snapped. Hazel's manipulating both of you. She's jealous. Connor got attention for once. That statement, so utterly detached from reality, would have cut deep once. Now it merely highlighted their delusions. Actually, a crisp voice said from the doorway, I've been documenting everything since my arrival. Whitney Thompson stepped forward, confident and composed. None of us had noticed her enter, holding up her phone, she added, including hostile remarks toward a healthcare professional advocating for vulnerable relatives. My mother's expression transformed instantly, false warmth activated, smile fixed in place. And you are? Whitney Thompson, she replied smoothly. Pediatric nursing supervisor at Portland Children's. I'm here to support Hazel during her family's crisis. What I've seen raises concerns about elder neglect and enabling behaviors. This is a private matter, my father tried weakly, not when it involves health risk or abuse, Whitney countered. As a mandated reporter, I'm obligated to document and report all concerns to the appropriate state bodies. The weight of authority, external, neutral, impossible to manipulate, fractured their last defense. My mother faltered. My father's posture sagged. Connor used the moment. I'm going to Riverstone, he said again, voice clearer. I've signed the intake forms. And the house will be sold, Grandpa added, tone final. We're not requesting permission. We're informing you. The cracks in my mother's polished demeanor deepened into a full collapse. You can't do this, she cried. You've conspired while we were gone. Connor needs family, not strangers. Actually, I said calmly, Grandpa granted me durable power of attorney and medical proxy rights. Signed and notarized. I pulled the documents from my bag, placing them on the table like a checkmate in a years-long game. We'll challenge this, my father growled. You've tricked an elderly man, taken advantage of his confusion. I'm 76. Grandpa barked. Not delusional. My neurologist has confirmed I'm of sound mind. These decisions are mine. My mother's tactic shifted again, her anger replaced by practiced sobs. After all we've sacrificed, she wailed. This is how you repay us? By turning on your own family? You took my college fund, I answered steadily. Left your father uncared for. Pretended Connor wasn't drowning until he nearly died. We were going to repay you, my father said, desperation leaking from every word. With what? Grandpa asked. You've refinanced your home twice, maxed every credit line, spent away retirement. Where would repayment come from? The illusion cracked. Their empire, built on evasion and hope, had collapsed under truth. My parents exchanged a desperate glance, panic undeniable. What do you want? My mother asked at last, strategy glittering behind the tears. To punish us. To rip Connor and your grandfather from our care. To make us suffer. My mother's voice cracked with accusation. No, I said plainly. What I want is accountability. Connor deserves actual treatment, not another cycle of justification. Grandpa needs consistent care, not neglect in the form of denial. And I want the money you took from me, so I can pay off the loans I've worked years to manage. My father hesitated, shame flickering behind weary eyes. The money's gone, he admitted. We don't have it anymore. Then you'll draft a repayment schedule, I replied, tone unwavering. With signed documentation and interest specified. And if we refuse? My mother demanded, her voice rising with disbelief. I'll file formal complaints, I answered. Financial exploitation and elder neglect are crimes, not disagreements. Witnesses exist. Paper trails exist. The decision is yours. The air in the hospital room thickened as a lifetime of avoidance reached its breaking point. The usual tactics, guilt, misdirection, appeals to sentiment, no longer held sway. My parents, for perhaps the first time, were standing at the edge of consequences they couldn't talk their way out of. "I need help," Connor said softly, voice fragile but certain. "Real support. Not another round of pretending everything's okay. I'm entering Riverstone tomorrow. Whether you approve or not." That sentence, spoken with conviction I hadn't seen from him in years, landed like a blow. My mother stared at him, stunned. For a moment, something resembling recognition entered her expression. "You nearly died," she whispered, face pale. "I know," he replied gently. "And I will die if things keep going the way they've been." For once, maternal instinct aligned with reality instead of the illusion she'd clung to for years. Her carefully guarded image of control wavered as she absorbed his vulnerability. The version of our family she liked to project, stable, loving, functional, had been irreversibly shattered. "What should we do?" she asked, not looking at me for guidance, but turning instead to her son. Her tone, for once, wasn't defensive. It was open. "Let me get treatment," Connor said, "and begin repairing the damage, especially with Hazel and Grandpa." My father, sensing the tide turning against him, tried to regain footing. "We can talk about all this later. Let's wait until emotions settle." "No more delays," Grandpa interjected, voice stern despite fatigue. "Connor enters rehab tomorrow. I'm moving into assisted care near Hazel. These decisions are final. Hazel has my full legal authority to ensure they're carried out." He stared directly at my parents, the same unwavering gaze he'd once reserved for board meetings and courtroom testimony. "Your choice now is whether to accept these changes with grace or resist them to your own detriment." The words carried weight only he could wield, spoken not as a plea, but as a verdict. My mother's stubborn posture began to sag. My father looked at the floor, silent. Just then, Officer Martinez arrived in response to the hospital's mandated referral. His uniformed presence shifted everything from possibility to consequence. He pulled out a small notepad and began taking statements. "We'll cooperate," my father muttered finally, voice deflated. "Whatever plan you need, repayment, treatment arrangements. If it's what Connor wants, I'll agree," my mother added, glancing at her son with unfamiliar softness. No sudden miracle occurred. There were no tearful embraces or grand resolutions. Real-life family reckonings don't follow Hollywood scripts. What unfolded was quieter, the creation of firm boundaries, the beginning of long-overdue responsibility, and the first real steps toward repair. As Officer Martinez completed his notes and departed with copies of signed statements, my parents quietly retreated, confronted by a reality they could no longer dismiss. Across the room, Connor met my gaze. "Thanks," he said, voice low but sincere. "For not abandoning me." "Never," I replied, the single word carrying everything we'd survived. I hadn't enabled him, but I hadn't walked away either. Somewhere between those extremes lay our best chance at recovery. Just 3 days earlier, Grandpa had sat alone, chewing a stale sandwich beneath a cruel note stuck to the fridge. Now, everything had shifted, not due to luck or dramatic gestures, but because someone finally said, "This is enough." There would be no straight line ahead. Connor's path would have setbacks and relapses. My parents might slip back into deflection. Grandpa's health would deteriorate no matter the environment, but, for the first time, we were walking forward with our eyes open. That night, with Grandpa resting in his hospital bed and Connor mentally preparing for his rehabilitation intake the next morning, I allowed myself to finally rest. Not because everything was resolved, but because for once, I didn't have to carry every burden alone. Sometimes, holding your ground gives others the courage to find theirs. Have you ever had to draw tough lines with loved ones? Share your thoughts in the comments. Sometimes love means doing the hard thing, and refusing to support what's harmful. If this story spoke to you, please like and subscribe for more powerful reflections on healing, family, and growth. Recovery is rarely tidy. But with strength and boundaries, it's possible. Thank you for being here. Wherever you are in your journey, I wish you clarity, peace, and the courage to move forward.